But yeah, I mean, there's things I like about this game. I'm definitely, like, glad I have it now. I remember, now that I've played it a little bit, it's like, when I played the demo, I was, like, somewhat intrigued, you know? What is she doing right now? Why is she doing a crazy dance move instead of moving? This is really weird. Trophy earned. 2Bs.
I don't know what's happening.
Oh my god, she's still doing it. What up, players? This is Gearseed Zero. This is going to be the first in a short series of videos about Nier Automata. I just finished my first playthrough. For those of you who don't know, the game is designed to be a multiple playthrough game, and you don't get the full story unless you play through it multiple times. But I thought it would be fun to review the game in stages and just tell my opinions of the game as of the end of playthrough 1. I've only finished the first playthrough, so to start off, I wanted to say a couple of good things about the game. In general, it's got a bunch of neat ideas. There's a bunch of just neat little things that game developers should look at expanding upon and making into full-fledged systems in their games. The chip system was a good system for customizing your character, and it does help to ensure that you have a different experience from other players, because you can do things like pull off elements of your HUD that you don't feel like you need and get more chip space, so that's all good. Some of the humor and charming moments in the game were legitimately humorous and charming, so that's pretty good. And the music overall was excellent. And not just the music was excellent, but the way they implemented into the game was exceptional, because they made multiple versions of every song so that each area could have its theme without it getting stale. And, you know, as things would ramp up in that area, you know, that get more dramatic with the music, and all of that was pretty cool. So now I want to talk a little bit more middle of the road, and not necessarily bad, but just kind of like not really as good as people are saying. 2B's character design. The reason I'm showing all these panty shots is because I think that some people are looking at her character design through rose-colored glasses. She is pretty basic. If you did a side-by-side of her character next to, I mean, the first one that comes to mind is Bayonetta, also a Platinum Games character, also a star of an action game. You know, it's not really much of a comparison, is it? She's just a girl wearing a black maid outfit, and I mean, she's just super tropey. She looks like an anime girl character. The most unique thing about it is that she's wearing a blindfold, so, you know, good on you for encouraging girls to wear bondage gear to anime conventions, but, you know, it's kind of meh. Especially once you realize that pretty much everybody on their team looks like that. I mean, I get it, they're androids, they're all kind of supposed to look the same, but, you know, and so it is a choice in that sense, but visually it does kind of make everybody kind of look the same, so that's kind of a neither good nor bad-ish thing. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the open world, and, you know, there's some pretty good environments in the open world. It's a pretty game for the most part. It's not a gorgeous game, I feel, but, you know, there's some pretty parts of the game. My favorite was the amusement park, but yeah, the game is really small, so when I was done with the amusement park, I was just kind of left, you know, like, oh, I wish there was more of that, but there's not, so that's the open world. It's got the smallest open world I can think of for a $60 PS4 open world game. So yeah, there's that. Also, somehow the mounts aren't particularly useful. I mean, you saw me riding a moose, and that's fun, but they just kind of, there's no way to really claim a mount and say, this is mine, and they just kind of wander around and do their own thing once you get off of them, and so if they get killed or wander off, you're just stranded wherever you were, and Yeah, and most importantly, my enjoyment of the open world was severely hurt by the overwhelming presence of invisible walls. And that's just bad game design. There's no excuse for this. This is bad. Like, I can clearly make that jump. So what the hell is going on? You know, like, you can jump off buildings in some areas and land it and be, you know, like, fine. This one's real bad too. So, you know, this is just bad game design. Like, what else are you going to call this? So the next thing I wanted to talk about was this game's bread and butter, which is to say, combat. I was expecting too much, I guess. I'm a guy that loves action games. Some of my favorites are like Devil May Cry, 3, 4, and 5, Bloodborne, Neo, and from Platinum Games' own library, I love Bayonetta 1 and 2, and Metal Gear Rising. All of those games are cool. They have weapons that feel different from each other and have unique play styles. This game doesn't have that. It's got 4 different types of weapons. Within those weapon types, like small swords, large swords, spears, and bracers, within those weapon types, pretty much all the weapons feel the same. All the small swords feel the same as each other, etc., etc. It's kind of cool that you can put whichever weapon you want on light or heavy attack, but, you know, why would you put a heavy blade on light attack? That's just silly. But, you know, regardless, you only get 2 weapon sets. That's another thing. And instead of being able to change out your pod ability, which I think would have been far more useful, you're able to change out your weapon sets at any time, which is just silly because you're going to go with whatever weapon you have leveled up. At least for your first playthrough. And just a reminder, this is still talking about first playthrough. But in any case, I mean, I don't see it really changing. The weapons aren't that interesting, you know. The combos, there's no real combo system. You know, you can do some light attacks and some heavy attacks depending on what you have equipped. It's just not as deep as an action game that I'm used to. So I suppose it's a pretty good action system for an action RPG game. But I was expecting more from a Platinum Games title. So there you go. So I have more I want to say about the combat, but before I get to that, I just want to quickly mention, right here, I'm checking my email, and I get a quest, and I guess this is a spoiler alert, but in this quest, you're supposed to eat a fish. If you eat the fish, then you die, go to a game over screen, and there's, you know, a cute little text joke right before you get the game over. And, you know, funny, right? There's another one where if you pull your OS chip out, the same thing happens. But here's my issue with it. After I did that, it added an ending to my list of endings in my save file. This game supposedly has 26 endings. I'm guessing that, like, at least 20 of those are bullshit like that. So that's just misleading to say that this game has 26 endings. That's not an ending. That's a joke game over screen. You know, it's not anything close to something like what Chrono Trigger had, for example, where you could New Game Plus and then beat the game at any time to get a different ending, depending on where you were in the story. You know, it's nothing like that. So, you know, we'll see on subsequent playthroughs if I try to get some more endings. You know, maybe there are multiple really cool endings, but so far, I'm dubious. So, there you have it. So to get back to talking about the combat here for a bit, one thing I forgot to mention is that there's an upgrade you get called Shockwave, which makes it so that your melee attacks do a little ripple effect that hit at range. It basically makes all your melee attacks into ranged attacks, and it's a pretty cool upgrade. It's kind of essential, I would say, and it just kind of exacerbates the problem I was talking about before, where all the weapons kind of feel the same. So it's, you know, not exactly a good or bad thing, I guess. You know, what you're seeing here is possibly the most interesting enemy type in the game, and also kind of the most annoying. But you know, whatever. But I mean, my point is that there's not really that many interesting enemies to fight. They're kind of all the same. They more or less all just kind of rush at you with a really crappy melee attack that's easy to avoid, and then you can get a free counter attack. And it's just, there just wasn't really that much to see in terms of enemies, and that kind of hurt the combat too, because every fight kind of felt the same. Now, the thing that's really supposed to make Nier awesome is that it's a cross with a bullet hell game, right? And I just found the bullet hell sections to be just kind of boring. They didn't really add what I felt like they should have added to the game. I mean, okay, so just to clarify, right, there's sections where the screen becomes like a 2D side-scroller, and, you know, those are okay, I guess. You know, sometimes I did find myself skipping them because it's really easy to just jump over them and move on to the next area. It's not like you have to fight everybody. And that's kind of a problem, too. By the end of the game, I found myself so bored that I was just kind of skipping combat a lot. So, you know. Anyway, so the 2D sections are just, they're kind of a nice change of pace, I guess. It's a nice look for those things, but you know, they didn't do too much. The top-down sections is, you know, it's kind of the same story. It's like, it's kind of interesting, but they're such small pieces of the game, and they're not really part of the open world. It's just certain sections of the game force you into the 2D mode of play, and it doesn't really change anything other than the way you're looking at what you're fighting. So, you know, that's kind of whatever. More importantly, I would have liked to have seen a lot more out of the mech that you get. You get this, they call it the flight suit, and it's really awesome, but you only get to use it like a handful of times during the game during very specific story missions, and it just doesn't make sense to me. And those particular sections, you know, while they were fun, it was basically just a really, really stripped down version of like an Ikaruga or something. You know, it left something to be desired. There was so much they could have done with a mech in this game. You know, like you could be flying it around. That could have been your travel mechanic before you get the fast travel, or if you can't fast travel somewhere, that would have been a cool thing to do. They could have had side missions and upgrades for the suit. You know, they could have done a bunch of cool stuff with that. But as it is, it's just kind of, you know, a thing you do in some of the story missions sometimes, and I would have liked to have seen more. Now, maybe I'll see more in the subsequent playthroughs, but, you know, we're reviewing the game as is, so if you are a fan of this game, I feel like I can hear you saying, but Gear, didn't you pay attention to the part in the story where they mention that you can't have the flight suit and explain why? And my answer to that is yes, obviously, and that's part of my problem. I actually hate how much hand-waving there is in this game. There's actually a character who you can talk to, and it's kind of fun to talk to them. It is kind of cool that it feels like there's a dialogue happening between the game developer and the player. You know, so that's something I approve of. However, you know, you got things like the map being garbage, and they clearly know that it's garbage because they mention that and hand wave it too. It's like, oh, you know, it's a satellite feed. That's just the way it is. You know, funny joke, but why didn't you just make a better map if you were aware of the problem? Why didn't you just allow us to use the flight suit if you knew we were going to be mad that we couldn't use it? You know, how does having an explanation change anything? Like, I just don't get how making a bad decision on purpose makes it a good decision. You know, like, a bunch of reviewers I've seen want to chalk this up as an artistic choice. But, like, a lot of these things have become industry standards, like trying to have a good map, because it makes your game more fun, and games are supposed to fundamentally be fun to play. So, you know, it's kind of ridiculous to claim artistic license in that regard. But, you know, whatever. I had a bunch more stuff I was going to say, but this video has already gotten a little bit longer than I intended it to be. But, you know, we're firmly in the section of stuff that I think is bad about the game now, so I just wanted to go ahead and say that I don't understand why people praise the story in this game. I don't understand why people say that the characters are deep in this game. They just seem like very normal anime characters to me. Like, there are some interesting questions that get raised in the game, and then immediately get given the most normal anime answer possible so that you can just keep moving along in the story. And it's, you know, it's like it poses these questions and then I guess is saving them for a later playthrough to really tackle them. But I find that hard to believe on some of these. It's just like there's a whole section of the game, I guess spoiler alert again, but there's some machines that are in a cult that worships God, and it's like, oh wow, what a unique and interesting idea. How are they going to tackle this? Well, fight them all, because they're crazy. It's the most standard anime thing that you could possibly have happen with such a philosophical question, and I just feel like it's just a bunch of pseudo-philosophical garbage that every anime show has been trying to do since Evangelion came out. And I'm over it, man. I'm 30 years old. I've seen this crap before. It's not new to me, you know. I'm not surprised by the story in this game. I'm not surprised by the characters in this game. 2B is your standard emotionless robot character. It's been done before many times, you know. 9S is slightly more interesting, I guess, because he's an android with a personality, but I mean, he's just kind of slightly curious and is attempting to have emotions and that be an okay thing. So I don't know. I don't understand why people praise the story in this game. Maybe I will in playthrough 2 and 3, but the whole point of me doing this whole video was so I could say, like, I can play many games that are fun on the first playthrough and stand on their own on the first playthrough, and will still have more content to offer in subsequent playthroughs. So that's my review of Nier Automata playthrough 1. I intend to finish it and, you know, never mind.
2B! You okay? They came out of nowhere, overran the entire camp. We tried to fight back, but our shots have no effect.
Alert. Energy shields detected on multiple enemy fighters.
This is stupid, like...
Got it. You get the
I
other
can't wait to
androids
show
out.
you what was going on while we were having this conversation. I'm not gonna spoil it. It's dumb.